Hey everybody, welcome back to Gun Totin' Minnesotan. My name is Andrew, and today I'm going to be talking about a blade sent out to the channel by Fintiso. This is a flipper tab style knife, liner lock, and I like some of the things I see about it. They asked what I thought and if I would give it a try and maybe just report to my subscribers a little more about it, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So without further ado, let's use it. Okay, this branch isn't supposed to be growing here next to my shed, and it looks like it's still pretty green underneath. Can delimb a little bit. It is a liner lock, so I'm not going to use it crazy hard. Let's go ahead and maybe give it a little bit of a bend. Yeah, that's not too hard to break with my own hands, but I can cut through green wood like that. Not too much difficulty, of course. It's cold. It's cold in Minnesota. I usually have a pair of gloves on, and when it comes to an EDC blade, I'd like to be able to make it work well with my gloves on. If it's too small, obviously I just can't get a grasp on it. If the blade is too thin, it's hard for me to actuate with gloves on because no gloves fit perfectly to my hands that are worthwhile anyways, especially insulated gloves. And this one, I'm going to tell you I can actually function the flipper as well as the liner lock pretty good with my gloves on. And these aren't really much for gloves, but they're better than nothing. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of work with it. Now with gloves on, it does insulate me against the blade as well. But I can tell you that when I was using this without gloves on, I'm surprised that this blade handle is a little bit more ergonomic than the first Fintiso that I reviewed. Same steel quality, I believe. This one is just slightly thinner. It's a little bit different blade profile, of course. But between the two, I would actually say this is the more ergonomic blade on top, and this is slightly less on bottom. This is heavier. It's got a very robust handle, and it's not terrible, but this is just better, and it's the contouring of the handle scales that I believe make it more comfortable for me. Okay, keep using this a little bit. So for an EDC blade, you're probably not going to be working with a bunch of wood, but if you needed to start a fire with it or just using it in general, you want to have a comfortable enough handle that's not going to give you hot spots. I don't think this will. It is reasonably sharp. Let's say it's pretty sharp. It's not the thinnest edge ever behind the edge. Let me say this. Behind the edge, the shoulder isn't terribly thin, but you don't want it to be terribly thin if you want robustness. You want it to last for a good amount of time without fracturing the edge. So I'm going to say for an EDC blade, I think it's actually an appropriate thinness of the edge and then thickness of the contour, thickness of the shoulder rather. Profile overall is a very functional one. It's got quite an acute tip, if you can see that there. Very acute, and I like that. Especially because I have almost like a Tonto shape going on here. I do have plenty of belly on this. So it kind of gets most of the uses for blades that I have, whether that be like kitchen work, actually cutting against food, or piercing into something, or perhaps just needing a little bit of belly for working on a tent peg, which that's not really what I was going for here originally, but I'll go ahead and carve a notch. It works pretty good. I mean, it's green wood. It should work good. But I'm going to tell you the contouring on the handle, the fact I can wear gloves and use it, and that it's not super thick behind the edge, allows me to do a fair amount with it, and I can at least do the basics of around a campsite or the things you would expect a folding knife to be able to hold up to. And that liner lock is it's reasonably strong. Actually, I don't feel any budge in there, no wiggle. I'm going to say it's a pretty strong lockup considering that it is just a liner lock. No wiggle at all. Tolerances seem really good on this one. So well done to Fintiso, because when it comes to liner locks, I've had much more expensive blades that were liner locks, and I could not say the same about those other ones. This one seems solid. Can get all my fingers on there, as you can see. Okay, I'm going to take my gloves off just for a moment so you can get a better picture what this looks like in hand. I have XL size gloves. So there's the actual size of the knife. I'm going to compare that one more time against the other Fintiso, which I feel like is just a touch heavier and bigger in a lot of proportions. They are both flippers, and they're both liner locks. Very strong liner lock, actually. Nice lock up overall. As far as the handle goes on this original, the first one I reviewed, that's pretty good. I don't know, the thing about this one is it's just a little bit less contoured overall. Probably a stronger handle in some ways with metal, but this one just feels more comfortable to me. With my XL size hands, I'm going to say there's every bit that I need, nothing extra, but nothing less. It's a pretty good fit overall, especially if you're going to use kind of this hammer style grip. I've got some pommel-ish thing hanging off the end here. It's enough. Kind of cool that in the very end of the tang, there actually is a hole through that. Oops, let me hold this up a little closer. The very end, in that pin that goes through the handle, there's actually a hole through there. You could put a lanyard, maybe like a thin lanyard through that, or you could run a lanyard through the pocket clip if you really wanted to. Man, I'm not doing a good job of holding this in front of the camera, sorry. So there's multiple places for a lanyard. I don't really need that. I don't worry about that so much. I just like having something that fits in my hand well. It doesn't give me hot spots, whether I'm using it for 10 seconds or 10 minutes. I'm going to say this is a pretty good fit. It doesn't feel like it would give me hot spots. The contouring and the edges has been done pretty well. Relatively smooth, but there's just a slight amount of jimping on that spine, enough to give me something to hold on to, press into, but it's not going to be rough or aggressive and eat up my hands, not at all. No edge on this knife seems really sharp. No dramatic contour shifts where it's just flat and aggressive. Only sharp part seems to be the actual edge, which is how a knife should be. If you don't like using a flipper and you want to use the hole there, it's not a Spidey hole exactly, but it's kind of similar. That seems to function pretty well. I don't have any trouble grabbing onto that. I typically don't do much for unboxings, but I will let you take a peek at what comes inside this box. Fintiso does do their packaging well, and presentation isn't everything, but it's not nothing either. If you have a really nice knife that's just kind of packaged like in a cardboard box and there's nothing else that comes with it, it just doesn't have any branding, it does kind of leave you feeling like it's a poor quality item. This is actually done really well. It's in a magnetic closure box. I know it's all black, so you're gonna have contrast issues here, but this is what it looks like inside. It's actually a pretty high quality setup. I've had a lot more expensive knives come in cheaper boxes. You have your manual, comes in there because there are a few extra parts that are gonna come with this. And it does come in a zippered case. So a zippered case like this, again, I've had lots and lots and lots of more expensive blades that didn't come in anything like this. Just plastic, cardboard, paper wrapped. So there's some extras that come inside that's kind of nice, especially considering I already think the blade is a reasonably good deal. There's some extra hardware there that you might need or you might want if you have to have a replacement. You have a cloth for wiping off your blade. It does come with some branding, Fintiso sticker, and that's it. It is like a velvety kind of soft cover. It almost feels like a glasses case to some degree, but it's got a velvet piece inside. That's just a nice extra. And then of course you have your blade. In the last Fintiso video I did, I went over this blade, and these blades don't have their model names on them. It just says Fintiso, and then also has the steel quality right here. They are both 14C C28N steel. They're both flippers, both liner locks. Some differences in handle material and texture and that sort of thing. Of course, aesthetically, they're not the same, but the steel quality is the same. The thickness is roughly the same, and the pocket clip is very similar or the same. I think it might actually be the exact same on the pocket clip. I would say if you're curious about that, I'm not going to make that a main conversation topic in this video, but it does ride nicely. It goes in the pocket well and out of the pocket well, and the actual clip has enough of a ridge to get over the lip of my pants and my jeans. Like I actually have, you know, kind of a thicker pair of jeans on. It can get over that just fine, but it doesn't seem like it wants to slip off and, you know, get lost out of my pocket or anything like that. The actual gap for the pocket clip is enough for the jeans on thicker material, but then also on thinner pants. I have worn both of these on a pair of thinner pants that were like, if you're familiar with the Condor pants called the Cypher pants, they're a really thin material, kind of a tactical pant, but they're very thin. And I was curious if stuff would just ride out of those pockets when I sat down or changed positions or knelt down rather. And this thin piece right here allows there to be enough tension on most pairs of pants that I've had that it just doesn't come out or get lost on me. And the clip itself seems reasonably strong. Has 2 pieces of hardware to hold it on there, and I just don't anticipate this ever getting lost because of you know, a normal sitting position. You know, maybe it could get snagged on something and left out of your pocket if you had thin enough pairs of pants on. I suppose that could happen, but in normal use, I don't anticipate losing this. Plus, it's big enough and weighty enough, I think you would notice it or hear it if it did leave your pocket. Something worth giving some kudos to is actually the action of the blade. Both of these blades have really smooth action, and the liner lock bit snaps into place well. The blade centering, actually on this blade, the blade centering is perfect. Absolutely perfect. There's not a hint of favor or bias one way or another. The lockup, according to my eye, looks to be fantastic. It's just machined really well. It feels like a really high quality blade. I would actually say for the price point, these blades feel like a more expensive knife. That would be my opinion. The coloration on this isn't my favorite. It's not my preference per se, but I don't care about that. I'm more interested in performance. And again, the actual lockup is really good, and the blade centering on this is perfect. No complaints whatsoever. One thing that's kind of nice, I don't think you see this a lot with blades at the price point, is there's a little texture on the flipper on this, the new one here that I'm reviewing for today. So this has a texture on the flipper. The old one, instead of doing a texture, it actually has a bit of a cutout. There's a little bit of a recurve on the flipper so you can get some good purchase on it and a little bit of probably more leverage to flip it out. And this one, although it doesn't have the scoop, it has texture on there, and I'll take that texture. When it comes to a flipper, it's dual purpose because the next place the texture matters is in keeping your finger positioned in the guard. So it's a nice idea. I prefer blades to run all the way back. I don't like having a cutout here, but some of you might prefer that so you can get up, choke up on the blade and get very, very close for whatever detail work you may need to work with. I don't think the blade's gonna bite you. It's not excessively sharp right here. It's not a pinch point because when you close the blade, your fingers should be out of the way, like that. Okay. I don't believe you're gonna have issues with pinch points or getting cut by that if you do choose to choke up. But those of you who sharpen and you prefer a large sharpening choil, obviously this blade has a very large sharpening choil, and then this model has a smaller sharpening choil. So actual cutting surface wise, I feel like this has a little bit more length than this one does. But this one seems to cut better or slice better, at least in my experience. So let's go ahead and cut up some stuff. Okay, really quickly, I have a little bit of trim insulator or weather block here for a door. I'm gonna cut through. This is kind of like foam, but then on the other side is a rubber, and it's pretty tough stuff. I'll cut against this cardboard, and slicing wise, it slices through reasonably well. There we go. Even though that's a tougher rubber material, yeah, it's not too bad. Actually, I think if I cut against a hard piece of plastic, it'll probably show the strength a little better, the cutting performance a little better. because the cardboard is absorbing a little bit of my effort there. So let's just do that. Yeah, very slicey, actually. I'd say it's more slicey than anything else. And these pressure cuts, it's a tough piece of rubber that I'm cutting into on that side. Pressure cuts wise, I'm not getting too much of a hot spot. Minor hot spot on the jimping, that's to be expected, but really not too bad. Slices through really well. Very controllable blade. It's not so big that you're concerned about how much blade is hanging out over the edge. It's a pretty reasonable amount, but it is also enough edge to do a little bit bigger project or chore than what I'm doing now. Handles that rubber bit just fine. The plastic and all that doesn't seem to be slowing it down. Still plenty sharp, even though that's probably somewhat abusive on the edge. Double thick cardboard is always a good thing to cut on. Well, that's a seam, so that's not probably the best test. Let's go a place where there's not a seam. Right here. Yeah, it slides through that pretty easily. And double thick cardboard usually dulls a blade out relatively quick. There's enough sand and grit and glue, and just the paper itself is pretty tough. The blade is definitely thin enough to slide through. And the interesting thing about cardboard is if you really needed to hone it, depending on the steel type you have, you can kind of hone this blade steel. Because it's meant to be a knife steel, I've found it relatively easy to hone this kind of steel against something like cardboard. As long as it's a hard enough piece of cardboard, I kind of go with the grain structure. And I find that that actually works really good. It worked very well just right now. It's right back to razor sharp. That's probably hair popping sharp if I didn't have the glue on there. There's a little bit of glue residue. Just double check. Yep, definitely. It's not perfectly sharp. I do have some dull spots in there from working with wood, but it is shaving off hair. No problem. It's easy to find that edge and get that sharpened right back up. Kind of a cool thing you can do with cardboard. Let's cut a little bit more. And this edge, let's cut that off. How about against the grain? That's probably a better idea. Let's go against the grain. That's way tougher on an edge, and it's harder to do. If a blade is too thick, it's really going to struggle with this right here with double thick cardboard. Here's the old Fintiso that I really haven't touched up much. Oh man, you can see it's just kind of destroying the cardboard versus this one, which just seems to be a little slicier in general. I'm going to say this one seems to slip through the cardboard better than this one does, and it's just a different profile in general. A couple more times. Not a struggle. Oops. I would say this is a pretty good cardboard cutter, breaking down boxes, doing the normal things that people do with all their knives. This is going to get it done. One thing I will say is this appears to be generally right-hand only carry for me. It is tip up, which I think is appropriate. Some people might be kind of bummed out if you're a left-hander. There's nothing there. And so for a left-handed guy, I don't know. I don't know what they could do. Maybe in the future, Fintiso will create some options that have an ambidextrous pocket clip option, or at least an insert there. This one just doesn't have it. In fact, it's not milled in a way where it could be very easily. You have to actually change the design on the interior so that the set screws there to have somewhere to engage against. This one is skeletonized, again, to try to keep it lightweight. I think that's why that interior is the way it is. Coatings, with the last one, if this coating is anything like the last one, the coatings are reasonable. I don't think they're gonna just chip off and give you cancer. I do think that in general, I prefer, just me as a person, I prefer blades without coatings. I don't want any coating on it, especially because I work with meat, food a lot, and then I might go to wood, and that can be rough on blades. But if you don't want your blade to rust, sometimes it's nice to have a coating on there. And if this is just an EDC beater knife, you're gonna be cutting up hay bale cordage with it. You're gonna be working around your farm. The advantage there is that this is a pretty good steel, and it's very, very easy to sharpen this steel, yet I think it holds an edge very well. It's very easy to hone, and yet I don't think it flakes out or chips the way some other lesser steels were. For me, this is a harder steel. This variant, the way that they have done the hardening on this, it's not as soft as some other Chinese steels that were 14. And maybe even like, if you're familiar with 8CR, 13 MOV, whatever that steel is, that kind of steel is inferior to this. This is a superior steel by, I would say, a decent amount. So I think they went with the right choice. That's one of the best parts and characteristics of this knife, is the steel quality. I think you're getting for your investment into this blade, you're getting a steel that normally would cost you maybe $10 or $15 more in other brands to get the same design, essentially. So probably a good deal overall. And with the blade profile being generally slicey, the lockup being generally strong for a liner lock, and the ergonomics being comfortable, I think I can get behind this blade at the price point and say it's a decent buy. Whether it's the best blade for you and the way you use knives, or if you would actually EDC a blade of this size, it might be a little big or a little heavy for some of you. That's going to be for you to decide. For me, I don't mind carrying blades of this size. In fact, I almost need a blade at least this big so that when I wear gloves, I can grab onto it. And it's probably just too hard with blades that are smaller than this to function them with gloves or mittens on of any sort. This, though, worked for me. Thank you guys for watching this short and brief overview of this Fintiso blade. I think Fintiso is a company worth watching. Any company that puts out a design that has some good thought, it's executed reasonably well, they're not putting out junk, and they use good steel. That seems like a company that usually is going places. I've noticed that this brand is open to critique from me, that they are cool with me letting them know what I think is better or worse about a knife, and they don't seem to be so concerned about protecting just a reputation that they actually want to put out a better and better product. That seems like they're going to go places with that attitude, and what they have already is worth purchasing. This isn't junk. I wouldn't say redesign it and come back, or you were really close. I would say this is going to hit all the boxes for a lot of people out there for an EDC blade, that you're going to do a little bit of outdoor stuff, a little bit of indoor stuff, and you just don't want to spend $100 on an EDC blade. This probably will hit the mark for many people out there. It all just kind of depends again. What are your needs? What are you going to do? What kind of blade profile is most useful for you? For me, I could actually EDC this. Will I? Sometimes. That's the truth. Sometimes I'll carry this. It might even end up being a gift for someone else, but I wouldn't be ashamed to EDC this because it's not a junk knife. It's actually pretty good. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you already own one of these blades, maybe comment down below what your experience has been with that blade over long term. I don't have long-term miles on these blades. I have less than a year on both of them. I probably will keep one of them as a minimum and come back in a year and let you know about the steel. I've already been able to reprofile one, the other blade that I had recently reviewed, and then hone it up. And I have been able to find out that the steel itself seems like above average quality, or at least above average hardness. That's what my estimation is. And so I do plan to do a follow-up on these probably in 2025, maybe in the fall, something like that. Otherwise, you can check out some of these videos and see if they interest you.